At 9:14 and 06 seconds, the USS Abraham Lincoln's sonar room detects 4 high-speed underwater contacts entering the engagement zone at the same time. 2 contacts are coming from bearing 011. 2 more are coming from bearing 187. The carrier's torpedo defense doctrine is built to break one attack axis, deploy stern decoys, turn the hull, and force the seekers to chase false noise. It was not built for 2 Iranian Kilo-class submarines firing from opposite bearings inside the same minute. The ship has 61 seconds before the first torpedo reaches the carrier's projected track. Every display and combat information center fills at once. Acoustic lines tighten, bearing markers overlap. The tactical plot shows something worse than a large attack. It shows a geometry problem. What the system believes is happening is a standard submarine engagement with multiple weapons in the water. What is actually happening is a trap designed so that every correct response on one axis becomes the wrong response on the other. The first order is hard left rudder. The second order is stern countermeasures away. Both orders are doctrinal. Both orders help one side of the problem. Neither solves the whole picture. To understand what is happening, you need to understand what Iran had actually built into the attack. Iran did not send 2 submarines simply to increase the number of torpedoes in the water. Iran sent 2 submarines to split the carrier's defensive logic in half. Abraham Lincoln's acoustic decoys launch from the stern and create a false hull signature behind the ship. Against a torpedo closing from astern, that works exactly the way it was designed to work. Against a torpedo driving in from the bow, those same decoys are functionally irrelevant. Turn the ship away from the northern weapons and the bow opens to the southern weapons. Turn away from the southern weapons and the stern crosses the northern intercept line. Iran did not design the torpedoes to defeat the defense. Iran designed the attack to make the defense irrelevant. And before we get to the one detail in this attack that changed everything for the USS Abraham Lincoln, take a second to like the video, drop your take in the comments, and subscribe, because what Chief Petty Officer Daniel Mercer noticed at 6:27 is the part Iran never saw coming. Chief Petty Officer Daniel Mercer had been uneasy since 6:27. Mercer was not the battle group commander, and he was not even in the main decision chain. He was Abraham Lincoln's senior passive acoustic analyst, a man who had spent 17 years listening to small abnormalities in background noise and learning which ones belonged to biology, weather, merchant traffic, or machines that were trying very hard not to sound like machines. At 6:27, he logged a faint transient on bearing 190 at low speed and inconsistent blade rate. The onboard classifier marked it probable biologics and cleared the track after 2.9 seconds. Mercer did not clear it in his head. At 7:41, another contact appeared on bearing 008, deeper, shorter, and carrying the same irregular acoustic smear. The system again called it probable biologics. Mercer marked both returns and filed an anomaly note at 7:49. The report did not go nowhere. It went somewhere worse. And it went into the system exactly the way low confidence warnings usually do. Reviewed, logged, deferred, no weapons release condition, no confirmed hostile track, no immediate action required. Mercer had seen that language before. He kept watching anyway because the pattern bothered him. Opposite bearings, similar transient shape, long separation in time, matching low-speed behavior. Marine life does not mirror itself across a carrier screen with disciplined spacing. Diesel submarines on battery power do. At 9:14 and 06 seconds, both contacts came back loud. Not as shadows this time, as launch transients. 4 tube openings, 2 from the north, 2 from the south. The torpedo alarm sounded 3 seconds later. Lieutenant Commander Elias Grant, the tactical action officer, saw the same thing Mercer saw and understood the immediate problem. With the bridge ordered an emergency turn, The stern countermeasure launchers fired 2 acoustic decoys into the wake at 9:14 and 14 seconds. The first northern torpedo broke left and chased the false signature. The second northern torpedo held track, rejected the decoy after 1.6 seconds, and stayed on the carrier. The southern torpedoes did not even notice the decoys because the decoys were behind the ship and the southern weapons were driving straight at the bow. 3 torpedoes remained on valid attack solutions. 46 seconds to impact. An MH-60R was already in alert status. Lieutenant Avery Cole lifted at 9:15 and 02 seconds carrying 2 Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes, 1 helicopter, 2 hostile submarines, 2 shots, no margin. Cole had bearings from sonar but not a full firing picture. Well, he chose the northern submarine first because Mercer's earliest contact on bearing 190 had shown longer stationary periods, the kind of patient setup profile used by a boat assigned to hold a firing line and wait. The helicopter crossed release range at 9:15 and 21 seconds. The first Mark 54 hit the water 12 seconds later, found the northern kilo on emergency power, and locked fast. The submarine had sprinted the instant it fired, on battery after days of silent approach. Sprinting made it loud. Loud made it vulnerable. The Mark 54 struck at 9:15 and 49 seconds. Northern submarine destroyed. 1 northern torpedo still running. 2 southern torpedoes still running. 28 seconds to impact. Cole turned south at full speed. The second Mark 54 entered the water at 9:16 and 03 seconds on the southern submarine's last estimated position. But the southern boat had done something the northern boat had not. It had held discipline for 6 seconds after launch, then changed depth, released a mobile acoustic decoy, and accelerated through its own noise shadow. The Mark 54 shifted to the louder false source, then detonated 170 meters off the real target. Southern submarine away. Helicopter expended. No immediate airborne interceptors left. Rear Admiral Stephen Hale stepped onto the command net at 9:16 and 11 seconds. The order was brief. All hands brace for impact. It was the right order for the picture on every screen in the ship. It was not the right order for the picture in Mercer's head. Mercer was still tracking the southern submarine acoustically beneath the rising noise of the maneuver. He was also thinking about the torpedoes themselves. Iran's Kilo-class boats in this scenario were firing wake-homing and wire-guided SET-65 variants. The key detail was not their speed. It was the wire. Wire guidance matters because it lets the submarine correct the torpedo after launch as the target maneuvers. It matters even more in a dual-axis attack because both submarines can keep adjusting the weapons toward the carrier's evasive turn. Mercer had studied that vulnerability during a training review 11 months earlier and written a recommendation that combat turns against shallow wire-guided torpedoes should consider pressure wave interference zones. The paper was circulated, discussed, and filed. Now he needed somebody to act on it. He did not call the admiral. He called the bridge. He asked for the officer of the deck. Then he gave an order that sounded wrong the moment he said it. All ahead flank. Come right to bearing 176. Drive directly toward the southern torpedo axis. The logic was simple and almost no one had time to hear it. The torpedoes were shallow. Mercer estimated 14 meters. The guidance wires trailing back toward the submarine were also shallow. A carrier at flank speed does not just move. It drags a massive pressure disturbance and propeller cavitation field through the top layers of the water. Not enough to physically snap a copper guidance wire every time. Enough to corrupt the control signal long enough for a torpedo to commit to an outdated intercept point. If the ship crossed the southern guidance path at maximum speed before final terminal correction, the torpedoes would steer toward where Abraham Lincoln had been, not where it was going. The officer of the deck hesitated for less than 2 seconds because every normal answer had already failed. The helm answered, flank speed, hard right rudder. The carrier surged toward the very axis everyone else was trying to avoid. At 9:16 and 19 seconds, the first Southern torpedo received its last clean correction. 0.7 of a second later, the ship's pressure wave passed over the guidance line. Signal integrity collapsed. The torpedo held its final committed run on dead reckoning. Abraham Lincoln was already moving off that point at more than 30 knots. The weapon passed ahead of the bow and detonated 310 meters off the port side at 9:16 and 28 seconds. The explosion was close enough to throw men against bulkheads and darken one auxiliary panel in primary flight control. It was not a hit. The second Southern torpedo stayed connected fractionally longer. Then the four-shaft cavitation field reached the wire and scrambled the command path a second time. The torpedo kept the last geometry it had trusted. That geometry was old. It detonated 260 meters off the starboard bow at 9:16 and 31 seconds. The blast knocked 6 sailors off their feet in compartments far from the hull, but the hull remained intact. The ship kept speed. The remaining northern torpedo had rejected the stern decoy and was still chasing the carrier through the turn, but the acceleration changed the problem faster than its seeker could solve it. Its last useful intercept line assumed a carrier moving slower and farther left. Abraham Lincoln was now surging across the water on a different angle entirely. The torpedo began a search pattern 180 meters behind the wake, found no valid hull where its model expected one, and spent its final fuel in reacquisition. At 9:16 and 43 seconds, it sank without detonation. 0 hits, 0 mission kill, flight deck intact, propulsion intact, combat system intact, 6 injuries, no flooding. For 4 seconds, nobody in Combat Information Center said anything because everybody was still waiting for impact that did not come. Then Grant went back to the one question that mattered. Where is the Southern submarine now? Mercer never stopped tracking it. When the boat fired, it had given away the one thing a diesel submarine cannot easily hide after a long, silent approach: urgency. The moment the Southern Kilo accelerated, changed depth, and launched a mobile decoy, its acoustic discipline was gone. Mercer had the shaft pattern, transient signature, and likely evasion lane by 9:16 and 51 seconds. He pushed a refined track to CIC at 9:17 and 04 seconds, updated it every 3 seconds, and built a running prediction that showed the submarine heading southeast at 8 knots toward deeper water where it could try to disappear under thermal layering. A second MH-60R launched at 9:18 and 42 seconds with 2 fresh Mark 54s. This time, the helicopter was not prosecuting a guest position. It was prosecuting Mercer's continuous track. The first weapon entered the water at 9:21 and 09 seconds. The Southern submarine tried to brake with a depth change and another decoy release. The Mark 54 ignored the first decoy. Reacquired on the updated acoustic profile Mercer had already isolated from the submarine's own maneuver noise, and detonated beneath the hull 14 seconds later. The second Mark 54 was not needed for the kill, but it was dropped on the debris field at 9:21 and 31 seconds to ensure the contact was finished. Both submarines were now gone. At 9:22 and 07 seconds, Mercer transmitted the final kill assessment and then did something no one noticed in the noise of recovery. He pulled them back through the earlier logs and rebuilt both submarine approach routes from the first low-confidence returns. The northern boat had hidden inside tanker traffic noise for 11 hours. The southern boat had used a thermal layer and commercial propeller wash to mask its battery crawl for almost 2 days inside the outer screen. That mattered because the engagement was over, but the doctrine problem was not. By 9:25, every escort in the formation had Mercer's reconstructed bearings. Likely hiding depths and likely firing baskets pushed across the group network. What looked like one failed attack was now an intelligence burn. 2 Iranian submarines had spent days proving a concealment method that would never work the same way again. The near-miss detonations had shaken compartments, but they had also exposed routes, acoustic habits, and timing logic that future boats would have to abandon. The carrier survived the immediate crisis. The strike group gained the map Iran had been trying to keep invisible. That intelligence package would shape every anti-submarine search pattern in the Arabian Sea after sunrise. At 9:24, Abraham Lincoln's command team began reconstructing what Iran had tried to do. The attack had never been about 4 torpedoes alone. Yes, the real plan was to create a dual-bearing geometry that split the carrier's doctrine, exhaust the nearest helicopter shot, force premature countermeasure use, and leave the final seconds to mathematics. If the carrier turned one way, one pair would tighten. If it turned the other way, the other pair would tighten. If the helicopter killed one submarine, the surviving boat's torpedoes would still ride updated wire guidance into the carrier's escape path. It was a smart attack. It was asymmetric. And for 35 seconds, it worked exactly the way it had been designed to work. What Iran calculated correctly was the ship, the doctrine, the launch geometry, the decoy limitations, and the response timeline. What it did not calculate was the man in sonar who had already seen the pattern 3 hours earlier and never accepted the system's answer. Miss Mercer had noticed the matched pair. He had kept the bearings in his head. He had remembered a filed training paper about pressure wave interference against shallow guidance wires. And when every approved option narrowed toward failure, he used the one idea that doctrine had discussed, but never turned into instinct. By 9:32, Abraham Lincoln was still fully operational. Flight operations resumed after damage checks. The carrier never stopped sailing. The formation never broke. Iran had built a torpedo attack designed to make the carrier's defenses fight themselves. It failed because one under-regarded acoustic analyst understood that the real target was not the torpedo body, but the guidance path controlling it. Iran built the geometry. Iran timed the launch. Iran understood the doctrine. What it did not understand was the chief petty officer who had seen the flaw in the plan before the first torpedo ever touched the water.